Welcome back to another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Today, we're going to be talking about Trae Young in the Atlanta Hawks and the fact that I think we've gotten to a point where Trae Young has become an underrated basketball player in the NBA after winning Most Overrated Player in 2023 and came third place in that award by the Players Poll that's done by The Athletic in 2024 and 2025. I think that we've gone a little too far in the wrong direction with Trae Young, and I don't think it should even be possible to be in the top three in that award 3 consecutive years, because if everyone's saying that this guy's overrated, then he's no longer overrated just by definition. Let's not get into that too terribly much, but we're going to break down the Atlanta Hawks, and this upcoming season, I am pretty high on them, especially in an Eastern Conference that's pretty depleted when it comes to Jason Tatum being out, Tyrese Halliburton being out, and the Milwaukee Bucks, not sure what they're doing. So let's talk about Trae Young and the impact he's had on the Atlanta Hawks and the fact that they haven't yet signed him to a contract. Before we do, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We are at almost 1,300 subscribers and we're growing rapidly, and we're just grinding NBA content. We're going to be talking about teams that the national media doesn't like to talk about. For instance, Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks. They spend a lot of time talking about the Lakers, and that's always driven me nuts. So we're on here to talk about the NBA in its totality and some of the storylines that are also interesting and fun to watch develop. So Trae Young was eligible for a new contract on July 6th. It's August 9th, and he has still not signed that contract. He can sign that De'Aaron Fox deal that was 4 years, $229 million. He is still under contract for this upcoming season, and he technically does have a player option for the year after that. But Trae Young has kind of openly expressed some of his frustration with not yet signing this big extension, supporting Micah Parsons in a tweet. And then he also tweeted the Hourglass, which, NBA players love to send their little hidden messages through their Twitter. But Trae Young last season led the entire NBA in assists, and was 10th in usage rate. So he actually pretty impressive to be so high up at assists and be 10th in usage rate. Trae Young averaged 24 points for the season, and that was actually a down year for him when it comes to scoring. In his career, he's averaged 29.6 points a game, 28.4 points a game. The year that they made the Eastern Conference Finals, he was also an All-Star and made third team All-NBA. Trae Young has said that he's committed to the Atlanta Hawks. He hoped to recruit Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard. We're going to get into the roster and what I like about this team here in a minute, but right now we want to focus on Trae Young a little bit more. So Trae Young came in to this organization, obviously was part of that Luka trade, and it felt like right off the rip, people felt like they had to pick sides when it came to Luka Doncic or Trae Young. So there was a lot of, I don't know if animosity is the right word, but negativity towards Trae Young when it came to the way he was viewed, because in that trade, people felt like they lost that trade by a significant amount. And you can kind of get into that if you'd like. At this point, the Dallas Mavericks actually traded Luka Doncic, which is a different story for another day. But the Atlanta Hawks built their culture and their team around Trae Young, who fit in my opinion, to Atlanta perfectly. And we saw some massive moments in the playoffs. Obviously, the year against the New York Knicks, where he became a villain and really became, someone that was really popularized around the NBA. In Madison Square Garden, being so hated, they still chant negative things, we'll leave it at that, towards Trae Young, sometimes even when he's not playing in the game. So Trae Young came into this league and became a villain kind of off the rip, to the point where people had very strong opinions on him one way or the other. But that led to some of this voting in the Players Poll, where he was voted the most overrated player in the NBA, and then he came third in back-to-back seasons. So Trae Young is a guy who, his team obviously is the offensive engine behind a team that last year led the NBA in quality shot attempts. Now, they didn't hit a lot of those threes. They weren't the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. I believe they were 18th in percentage. But as far as shot quality, they were number one in the entire league. That is primarily because of their offensive hub, which is Trae Young. Now, a lot of guys get credit for being that offensive hub when it comes to setting their teammates up for success, being able to score the basketball in different ways. But because Trae Young is smaller, his defense is obviously not at an optimal level. They did struggle defensively for the majority of years of his career. Last year, that started to turn around. We saw the Hawks prioritize getting long wing defenders. They drafted Zaccharie Risacher, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, guys like that who you can fit around Trae Young to where he can do what he does on the offensive end of the court and isn't an absolute liability on the defensive end of the court. He actually does play pretty hard for the most part defensively. He's just a little undersized, but we've seen other NBA players who are very good offensively struggle on the defensive end of the court, and guys like Luka Doncic. Steph Curry wasn't always a great defender. It's something he's improved on, and he plays hard. He's kind of a smart defender, but these guys still kind of get praise in the media, but for whatever reason, Trae Young became this villain in the way that he was talked about, partially because he was compared to Steph Curry so much early in his career out of Oklahoma. He shot those long threes, had his celebration. He did his ice tray, which is still one of the sickest celebrations in the entire NBA. But the whole league kind of felt like they were against Trae Young for a little while, and to a degree, it still does. He's not talked about very much in the national media at this point. Obviously, the team has kind of struggled in the last few years. They finished 9th in the East last year, and kind of been hovering around that play-in team. Now, you do have to acknowledge the fact that Trae Young took his team to an Eastern Conference Finals. People want to downplay it because of the Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid Sixers team and the fact that they broke down. That was also partially because the Hawks executed at a high level and helped in the aiding of breaking them down. Making the Eastern Conference Finals is no small feat. It's something that Joel Embiid has never done, and there's been plenty of NBA players who have not been able to make the third round of the playoffs. So you do have to give him credit in playing in a winning culture and winning basketball. Now, obviously, they've had coaching changes over the last few years. They now have Quin Snyder, who they really like, and I believe has been a good coach from his days in Utah, and are set up for success in this upcoming season. They seem to be building a perfect team around Trae Young, like I mentioned, with those wings, but they also added an elite shooter in Luke Kennard, one of the best shooters in the NBA, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's a really talented forward, and then they went and got Kristaps Porzingis for basically nothing from the Boston Celtics because they had to get off of some salary. They're taking a chance on him. They got Onyeka Okungwu, sorry, I struggle to say his name, and then they drafted Asa Newell as a rookie, a guy they like, I believe, out of Georgia. But they also made a incredible trade with the New Orleans Pelicans, getting the Pelicans' first round pick next year, which again was a really stupid trade by the Pelicans because they are probably going to suck. But the Atlanta Hawks have set themselves up in a way in the Eastern Conference that I believe they will be the 4th or 5th best team in the East this upcoming season. You look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think in the regular season they're absolute juggernauts. New York Knicks, probably similarly, you are changing coaches. It kind of felt like you had a shakeup there. Both of those teams, though, flamed out in the playoffs when we got to, round 2 for the Cavs, round 3 for the New York Knicks. So it's hard to feel too confident that those teams are going to take that next step to reach the NBA Finals and be clear-cut, title contenders coming out of the Eastern Conference. When you're looking at that next tier, though, I would put those two teams in the tier by themselves. That next tier, you got the Orlando Magic adding Desmond Bane, which is a significant addition. They needed offense. And then you still obviously, you have your Milwaukees of the world. But I believe that the Atlanta Hawks are right there in that second tier in the Eastern Conference. Oh, Detroit was the other team that I wanted to mention. They're a young team, though, and they're adding Jaden Ivey back and didn't really make a whole lot of significant moves this offseason. Lost Malik Beasley, who was a big part, potentially their second best player last year. And, we know he's got some sort of massive legal scandal going on with the gambling nonsense. But the Atlanta Hawks this upcoming season are going to be have a lot of forward depth have good center depth. You have some of the best pairing of centers in Porzingis and Okungwu in the entire NBA. As long as Porzingis can stay on the court, obviously we know that that's been the big question mark for his career. And, some of these other guys who missed games for the Hawks last year. But you're talking about a team that should be really good on the offensive end because they have Trae Young and because Jalen Johnson took that next step forward. You expect Risacher to take another step in the right direction following his rookie year, hopefully being more confident in his game. This Hawks team is going to be a real player in the Eastern Conference, and don't be surprised if you see them in round 2, round 3, because when the moments are tight and when the pressure hits, that's when it feels like Trae Young becomes his best, and he's able to play that heel role, that villain role, especially on the road, and that has so much value in the playoffs when you go into hostile environments in Cleveland, in New York. Obviously I don't think Boston's gonna be that big of a player this year, but in those different environments, if you play well on the road and you're able to feed off that energy, it can have so much value, and that's what I believe that Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks have this upcoming season. I wanted to just spend a little bit of time breaking them down because it is frustrating sometimes that you see guys who have accomplished things in this league. 4-time All-Star Trae Young, a guy who's averaged 30 and 10, a guy who's made an All-NBA team, a guy who's made the Eastern Conference Finals, but it almost feels like the league picks guys that they turn against, and they all turn against at the same time. Rudy Gobert's another guy that I think is in that discussion where, he won his 4th Defensive Player of the Year, and, Shaq hates him, so it's gotten to the point where I think his stock has dropped too far. We're not talking about Rudy Gobert today. I just think that this is what the NBA does, though. It's what Twitter does, and it's what this new world we live in does. But Trae Young has went from a player that I was kind of down on earlier in his career to a player that I think has gotten underrated at this point and could lead this Atlanta Hawks to a really special season, especially in this Eastern Conference. That's all we got for you today. Make sure you take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate y'all watching. Let me know if you think the Hawks are legit or if you think Trae Young is underrated or overrated. Appreciate y'all watching.